We're talking about biologicals. We're talking about bionutrients. We're talking about the future of agriculture and the fact that we think there's going to be less harsh chemistry. That's what we're talking about in this episode of The Business of Agriculture. Hey, Damian Mason here with a question before we hop into this episode of The Business of Agriculture. If you farm for a living, you employ a lot of amazing technology, from your inputs that you put into the soil to the tractor that you sit in, your combine, and the amazing data that it harvests. But has your soil analytics kept up technologically with everything else in your farming operation? I would venture to say that no, it is not. Sure, you check for your nitrogen, your phosphorus, your potassium, your micronutrients as well. But what about disease pressure? Do you know what diseases and what pests you're going to face next year? No, you don't. But you can now figure that out with Pattern Ag's predictive analytics. Think about it. They can tell you now with testing what the likelihood of facing nasty diseases, things like cyst nematode or sudden death syndrome, what the likelihood of you having this in your field, then you know how to prepare, how to treat, and where to invest your money. It's using technology to make you bigger yields and therefore make you bigger money. Go to www.pattern.ag to learn more. They are pioneering the way in predictive agronomy. Hey there, welcome to another fantastic episode of The Business of Agriculture. We got Blake Matthews. He's an Idaho farmer, and he's talking about his journey in the usage of bionutrients and his farming operation. He produces potatoes, sugar beets, barley, corn, wheat, and alfalfa. Also got Darin Moon. He's the CEO and founder of a company called Redox Bionutrients, my new sponsor. Redox Bionutrients here of The Business of Agriculture. And I think it's a neat story because, Darin, I had you on my Business of Ag Success Group. And this space, and you willingly admitted it, has gotten very crowded. Venture capital money has poured into this over the last several years. You've got a bunch of people that don't know, they don't know the sand, silt, or clay. They don't know anything about soil. They don't know anything about agriculture. But by God, they got money. They're tech-type people, Silicon Valley-type people, and they're dumping money into this space called biologicals. We even shared a slide that had multiple hundreds of companies in this space. But here you are. You've been around for 30 years. You have an ag background. You started this company. You've been obviously doing something right. You've been around for 30 years. And we said, let's bring on a farmer and let's just talk about their journey in this space. So I think that's kind of what we want to do here. So you set the table, and then we're going to hand it over to Blake.
So the table would be set as following. I'm a big believer in constantly looking at ways to do things better. The bionutrient space is just another space to help growers get from point A to point B, and to also address the concerns that consumers and politics, et cetera, have today, which is environmental concerns. Okay, that's fantastic. We started 30 years ago, Damian, when this wasn't popular. This wasn't the thing to do. This wasn't like we're saving the world, which I still don't believe in. I believe in just doing things better. We went through the process of eliminating, of creating, et cetera, but our competition was conventional chemistry. Our competition was guys doing the same thing. We had to be in that space. And it's been very good to us. We very much enjoy what we do. And Blake was an early adopter for us because he's a very progressive thinker. He's always thinking outside of the box, not just with Redox Bionutrients, but with several other advanced chemistries, if you will. And working with Blake has been a pleasure. We've actually learned a few things from Blake, giving us information back about what he sees, what he likes, what happens, et cetera. So Blake's a really good sounding board, a really good person to look at because it's practical. It's on the ground. It's not a 10 by 10 box, which are what a lot of startups do. Is I got this 10 by 10 box in my garage and it grows better in my 10 by 10 box. Yeah. So Blake's got several thousand acres that he's been able to have success with in thinking outside the box. And I'm actually looking forward to hearing what he has to say as well.
Blake, it's interesting. So Darin said our competition. He's talking about when he started the company 30 years ago. And first off, I think the competition 30 years ago, he says, was conventional chemistry. No, the competition for 30 years ago in this space was adoption, acceptance, understanding. Getting past, let's face it, here we are 30 years later, there's still, I'm one of them. I'm still the skeptical farm guy that says, and I'm going to ask you a question, does this shit work? So that's where you were, but you've been using it for 12 years, right, Blake?
Yeah, so I I've been back on the farm since 2004. I kind of started down this road in 2010 when I had a local fertilizer dealer that I was working with. My field man at that point in time was going to go to work for a large neighboring farm, and they brought the new kid by. His name was Jared Cook. He's actually worked with Kelly Garrett on Extreme Ag a lot, and we got to know him through that year. And in 2011, we kind of sat down and had a conversation of there's got to be something else. The next saving grace cannot be the newest fungicide. You know, that's not going to make the whole farm different. What can we do different? And that year we started trying a few Redox products on sugar beets. We coupled it with some biologicals that we started using that year. And then from there, it kind of took off. And through those years, we've really delved down a few different roads. We've really tried going after soil health, plant health. And then almost as a challenge, we tried to get away from conventional chemistries. Potatoes are a very intensive managed crop. Typically, you know, they require between 5 and 6 fungicide applications a year, 3 or 4 insecticide applications a year. For the last 6 years, we've been growing with none because we are striving for plant health, total plant health. And Redox's products are one of the big bullets that we've got in our gun that work very well and work well with the other products that we're using.
Yeah, I want to get into the journey. Well, that's where we are. Okay, so you said you came back 2004. So you've been back on the farm 20 years.
Yep.
You did that thing that I encourage a lot of people to do. You went away, came back, brought some new ideas and new ways of looking at things. Yes.
Yeah, I actually got my associates from Utah State in agri-machinery technology, so a diesel mechanic. So I actually worked for Caterpillar for a while and our local dealer as a mechanic. And then one of our main employees on the farm decided to step away. And so at that point in time, I came back. I didn't have a whole lot of desire in high school to farm. I wanted to be in engineering. Did one semester engineering, decided there was too much book work with it and wanted to be more hands-on. So
you said then, 2004, and you started down this road. You've been using Redox's product for 12 years. What was the first foray? Was it because this is a pretty new space now. 12 years ago, 13 years ago, God knows 30 years ago when Darin started, you're talking about it was cutting edge. Would you call it cutting edge when you started?
Oh, I mean, it was cutting edge, stupidity. You know, I mean, you tell people still today, you know, that what we're doing, and they still don't believe us, you know. But that's the thing. At that point in time, I mean, we were just trying to. I mean, where we initially started was, you know, sugar beets are a Roundup ready crop, and so we were trying to find something that would help those beets process that Roundup faster and get through that slump every time we sprayed them. Was initially where we started.
Okay, so that is a very Darin. You know what? We should just let him be the host of this show. All right. Is that a promise? Is that a promise of the product line? Because of all the things I've heard about soil amendment, I've heard about soil enhancement, I've heard about correcting fungi to bacteria ratios. I've heard about some of these promises of using a biological. I've never heard it helps a glyphosate tolerant food crop, which there's 7, 8 now, sugar beets, soybeans, a few other. It helps them metabolize, I guess is the right word. Is that a promise of the product? And is that something you set out to make? Darin?
So it's not a promise of the product, it's a learn of the product. Here's what I mean by that. This is where the relationship with Blake has been very beneficial. Blake was looking for something. One of the things that biostimulants do is there's an entire back channel or back chain of plant metabolic products called secondary metabolites. It's what makes apples red. It's what gives leaves their shape, et cetera, et cetera. Secondary metabolites, phenolic compounds, amino acids, and proteins, okay? If we can have those pathways be stimulated and working, then when the plant comes up under stress, and let's be straightforward, when you put on chemistry, oftentimes you're adding to the stress, okay? Meaning the stress of the chemistry gets rid of the bug, gets rid of whatever, but it also causes a little bit of stress to the plant. If we can prime the plant so that that plant is actively producing those secondary metabolites, then overcoming the stress of a glyphosate application, overcoming the stress of certain fungicide applications, or whatever stress that crop is dealing with that day becomes much more possible. So that's where we didn't set out to be a glyphosate resistant or help the plant overcome glyphosate. We set out to stimulate plant secondary metabolites. It is the stimulation of those metabolites and then learning when to apply the product, how much to apply of the product, etc. That's where working together with Blake has taught us. And also Blake, as I think would say, he's learned a lot from us. But that's kind of how these processes work, is understanding basic plant metabolism and then working off of that. That's how we came to that.
So Blake, your foray into using a bionutrient type of product was that you wanted the sugar beets to not take a sting, or to help them tolerate the sting.
Exactly. I mean, and it wasn't necessarily even a sting. It was just they wouldn't do anything for 10 days after you sprayed them. And so we were trying to figure out a way, okay, if we can get that down to 2 or 3 days, and get them working faster, well, then, that's that many more growing days that they've got. And so that was kind of where we started down the Redox road, and then it's kind of blown up from there.
What about the soil part of it? So that's something that I didn't know. Was this okay? What was the secondary goal, the third tertiary? What things did you say, here's why and by the way, probably Dad and Grandpa wouldn't have. You came back and said,
I mean, I farm with my dad and my brother. My brother kind of takes care of the cattle and that on our operation. But my dad, I mean, he's been doing it for his entire life and very skeptical as we've gone down this road.
And where is he,
Damian?
now?
Damian, I would tell you what Blake's dad called me, but it would not be appropriate on air. Okay, when I first met him, he called me everything but nice, because this was crazy. When Blake started this was crazy, and we started small, adapted, grew, and learned from each other. And I would tell you now, Blake's father is on board, but that's because it's gone from point A to point B to point C, and we've been consistent in what we've given.
Like, what about what's the old man's assessment now about experimental stuff that you've been doing for 12 years?
Well, I mean, he's still, well, what new thing you trying this year, and we need to let somebody else try it first. But we still do it. And so far it's worked. And I mean, you can't be on the cutting edge without getting a little bloody. I mean, we've had some failures. We've had some stuff that hasn't worked, and we've had some stuff we've had to regroup with. And so, I mean, and he understands that, but every now and then it's still a little bit of a fight on what we're going to do. And sometimes we just don't tell him.
All right. How do you use, first off, you talked about reducing insecticide and fungicide. Okay, potatoes get a lot of treatments.
Yes.
And
normally, yes.
I don't know if you could even really produce, because we get an amazing, like 30 tons. When I've spoken to the potato group, like 30 tons of taters per acre, or some ungodly number like that. Right?
Yes. Yeah, so it's a large amount. It's
a large amount, very, very, very productive. But to get that tonnage, you're out there a lot. And fungicide, insecticide, I mean, if you grow organic potatoes, they ain't gonna get 30 tons. So, I mean, we treat them this way for a reason, because we get massive amounts of them. You talked about reducing insecticide and fungicide applications, and biologicals, bionutrients helped you do this. I want you to give me that whole scoop.
No, absolutely. So we, I guess to kind of fill in a little bit more of the story. So after we started with the sugar beets, we came in and met with Darin and the company and kind of went over their products to discuss what was there and where we thought we could use them. And then once we understood more of the products, then we thought, okay, this is where we can use these products and start putting them in. And so we started down the road of, we use a lot of their products in furrow, on potatoes, sugar beets, and corn. And with that, we were, potatoes usually in the past, I mean, a standard practice on potatoes is an in-furrow insecticide and an in-furrow fungicide. And then usually you're flying some on starting, mid to late June, clear through into middle of August every 3 weeks, depending upon what the disease pressure is out there. So we've replaced all of those fungicides and insecticides with bionutrients, and as well as just we've been using sap analysis for a lot of years, and we're really trying to get the plant balanced and keep the plant healthy and happy, relieve that stress. And then that also starts, with a healthy soil as well. And so, and not to even mention on potatoes, potatoes is a huge deal on those is soil fumigation. And we've walked away from that as well, between the biologicals that we're using as well as the bionutrients, that we're able to walk away from that. And, the good guys outcompete the bad guys is what it comes down to.
Darin, without taking me to Chemistry 112, I didn't do well in that class. Without taking me to Chemistry 112, how does a biological product put in furrow replace the need for, Blake just said that standard practice was at time of planting, an insecticide and a fungicide went in, say for potatoes. How does a biological, it seems like the mode of action is completely different. It's I'm trying to get my head around it.
Yeah, so this is a really great question, because one of the things I never want to do when we've tried to stay away from in Redox is to overpromise, okay? So the pathway is very straightforward. What we know is this: if you look at the pharmaceutical industry, many pharmaceuticals come from soil organisms or from plants. Many of our pharmaceuticals that we take as humans are started from extractions from soil organisms or plants. So it's there. How do we enhance it? So your question was, how would a soil in-furrow application of 3, 6, 10 ounces a pint, how would that affect an entire acre? Here's how it affects it. A scientific fact is, depending on the plant species, 40 to 60% of all of the photosynthetic activity that a plant creates ends up not in the roots, out in the soil. Okay, so now if I create a plant that's growing actively, that, as Blake put it, is balanced, is metabolically active, at least half, let's use the term half, of that photosynthetic activity ends up out in the soil. Why? Because that plant is trying to create a soil environment that is beneficial to itself. So it can stimulate organisms that will produce compounds that will resist or put off fungal attacks or nematode attacks. These are facts. What the problem is being consistent with it. Therein lies the relationship between soil chemistry, water chemistry, plant physiology. You can't just pick one segment of this and attack it. You have to look at it as a whole picture. So I want to treat the plant. I want the plant to grow better so it will produce all of these metabolic compounds, A, for itself, and then B, to improve soil biology. The best way to improve soil biology is to grow a plant root. That is the single best way. There are great biological products out there, and every one of them that are successful have something to do with not just the soil itself, but with plant roots also.
Blake, I want to hear about then how it works the rest of the year. When you said you've reduced the insecticide fungicide, before we do that, I want to remind you, dear listener, that you might have a partner who can help you get more revenue off of the acres you already farm. Let's just say maybe you're using cover crops, reduced tillage. You know what? These things are going to be more and more of an issue as we move forward, and we're talking about maybe you can get some money for it. Truterra could help you do that. Truterra helps farmers at every stage of the sustainability journey to help plan, make, and maintain a regenerative management practice that improves your agronomic as well as your economic and environmental sustainability on your operation. Go to TruterraAg.com. Truterra, that's right. They were part of the Land O'Lakes family. You can trust them. Truterra, TruterraAg.com. Go check it out. Maybe you can use some of their money, get some money for practices you already do on your farm. Did you completely eliminate the insecticide and fungicide? It doesn't seem... always be careful. Darin says don't overpromise. Sometimes things seem a little too good. There's no way you got completely away from insecticide and fungicide on your potatoes, did you?
We did. We once we got down the road a little ways, we saw what the plants were doing, and Jared and I took it as a little challenge. Let's see what we can get away with and not using. Now we replaced them. We're still applying things, but they are either bionutrients or nutritional products, depending upon what our sap samples are showing throughout the season. So we're still making the flights, but it's just not with a chemistry. It is with a nutritional product or a biological or a bionutrient, depending upon what that plant needs.
What about money? Okay, real quickly then, the skeptical person then says, okay, you've gotten away from insecticide and fungicide. You're using other stuff. Is it just Redox stuff, or is it a whole cocktail?
No, it's a program. It's a cocktail. I mean, there's about 5 different companies that we're using different products from that we have found a synergy between that work really well. For instance, Darin's got one product that it's a silicone-based product that actually increases the thickness of the leaf. Well, with that increase of the thickness, the insects have a harder time penetrating it, so they don't bother the plant. And so, I mean, there's these side effects that we've been able to find through using these products that we've been able to start stepping away from these things. And it all kind of came just as a challenge with ourselves. Can we get away from this? We didn't, we weren't trying to get away from it, but we thought, okay, can we physically do this? And through a couple of years, we completely stepped away from it and have been able to stay away from it because of the use of these products.
Money wise, is it just a changing of money, or is it a reduced spend because you got away from the harsher chemistries?
I feel it's a reduced spend, because let's face it, the fungicides aren't cheap, and some of the cocktails that we were having to put together on the potatoes are, some of our first airplane rides were between $80 and $90 an acre for one ride, so I mean, it doesn't take much to get cheaper than that, so I mean, so we were able to load up pretty good on some of these nutritional products and still be way cheaper. And you could see it in the plant, how they kind of just flexed up and were what you wanted to see.
Darin spoke about improving soil biology with roots. Are you seeing, is one of the pitches, Darin, I want to go back to Blake, one of the pitches that it's not just replacing products, it's not just reducing spend, it's got to have a long-term benefit. A guy like Blake wants to make sure that he leaves the land better than he got it. Is that, in 12 years of usage, Blake, something you're seeing? And then I want Darin to speak to, is this one of the pitches that you say it's not just going to replace the product, it's also going to give you a cumulative effect of benefit to the soil? Absolutely.
I mean, we've watched, since we've kind of been down this road, I mean, we've watched the organic matter in our soil. We've increased it a full % on most situations.
Well, wait, you're in Idaho volcano soil, so you went from 0 to 1%? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of spots that we were in the 1s to 1.5, and I mean, we've got a lot of soil now that we are well over 3% organic matter in.
Which, by the way, that's a doubling of organic matter, which then, and you're all irrigated.
Exactly.
Does a doubling of organic matter allow more absorption, therefore less usage of water? I'm just thinking here. I mean, there's a lot of benefits to increase organic matter.
Yeah, 100%. And not only because of the organic matter, but the biological activity that we're seeing. I mean, our water usage dropped drastically. I mean, we've did some trials where we had fumigated and non-fumigated ground, and you could go in and physically feel the soil in the non-fumigated ground was heavily treated with biological products was wetter, just to the touch. So I mean, if you're feeling it with your hands, imagine what the plant's doing.
Yeah.
And so I mean, and we've done testing after testing of our biological activity through different labs of what we're seeing there, the fungal and bacterial balance that you talked about earlier, and so, I mean, yeah, there's things that we've seen that we weren't planning on by any means because of this, through this process, just because we've been able to help the soil be healthier. A lot of Darin's products, I mean, they do set on more roots comparative to not having it. And so, I mean, like Darin said, you want to increase biological activity, more root mass is your answer, is the fastest way to do that. And it is. I mean, we've seen it in every crop that we use these products on.
What's the lead thing you go out with? When I said, Darin, is it reduction of chemistry? Is it balanced plant? What's the first thing to the skeptical producer? You're coming to me in Indiana, and I'm saying, I got my bullshit meter up a little bit. What's the first thing you address?
Yeah, I think the thing we like to address is farmers know how to fertilize. Okay. Can we fertilize efficiently? And are we addressing the single greatest issue the plants deal with every day, which is stress? Plant stress. So there have been recent studies by Midwest universities talking about 70% of crop reduction in yield is not biotic stress. It's abiotic stress. So what do we worry about? We worry about insecticide, fungicide, bactericide. That's what we worry about. So we have our schedule of putting those out. Do we worry about plant stress related to soil water chemistry? Do we worry about plant stress related to heat? Do we worry about plant stress related to cold? If we can get a plant that is metabolizing better, we can reduce plant stress. When we reduce plant stress, that plant now is taking nutrients that we provide for it and growing a better crop, a stronger crop, a healthier crop. We could go down the list of all the things by reducing the stress. It's no different than in humans. When you're less stressed, they're proving this. Heart attacks, disease, how you feel, it's all related to stress. Well, plants are just like that. And if we can reduce plant stress, wow, now we're talking.
All right, so
that's
Blake,
our number one pitch, Damian.
Okay, so Blake, let's go with your number one pitch. By the way, you already referenced Extreme Ag. I'm wearing the hat. I produce their video content, podcast, and do events for them. And you spoke about Kelly Garrett, and he's my buddy in Iowa. That's one of the Extreme Ag founders. He made his major objective for the year 2022 was stress reduction on his crops. And he made a statement, and maybe you heard him, and maybe you agree with this. He said, I don't think that we've ever seen a stress-free crop. And I think that we're over-applying fertilizer, we're over-applying inputs, because that's what we've always known how to do. Darin just said it. We know how to fertilize, and God knows it was cheap for so many years. It was, we overused it, didn't get judicious usage at all. Stress reduction. Do you think as a farmer, that's the number one thing you get from using a biological is the stress reduction?
Well, I think stress reduction is a very broad product, or I guess a broad subject. I mean, so a couple different things.
Well, okay, watering. If you don't get any rain in Idaho, if you don't water, that's stressful. If it's hot, if it's cold, if you drive over it too much, there's a lot of things that are stressful.
Right.
Yeah, it's a broad topic. So quantifying it might be hard, I guess, is what I'm hearing you say.
Well, no, and I think, I mean, I'll boil it down to a couple different, I guess, criteria within that stress reduction. One is fertility stress. Like you say, we're over applying. I think we have over applied in the past. On my farm, we've walked away from 1152. We've walked away from Mod 60 because they're inefficient products. You have to apply so much to get what the plant needs. With a lot of the products that we're using, in potatoes especially, our past samples would show that we would need to apply 250 units of phosphate. Okay, well that's not sustainable. You can't afford to do that. I mean, this last year we run a heavy compost program, but on top of that, I mean we applied about 15 units of phosphate for our potato crop. Okay, and our sampling showed that we were not lacking in it. And so, I mean, you have we're applying all these fertilizers, the most of which are not available. And that's what's beautiful about a bionutrient is they are plant available and their efficiency is through the roof. And we've been able to prove that through the years. And so the plants are able to access what they need when they need it. So they're not nutrient stressed. The water stress, you talked about, when we have that biology working correctly, the plant can handle the heat and the cold a whole lot better. We get a lot of smoke events here in Idaho from wildfires, and the plants will just shut down because they don't see the sun for 2 weeks. And when you are able to have those biological pathways continually stimulated, that plant will still keep going instead of just completely shutting down. And so when you have that balanced plant like Kelly talks about, it's amazing the stressors that they can handle. Will we ever get to a stress-free plant? I don't know that it's possible outside of a greenhouse, but we're going to do our best to do that, and keep that plant healthy, balanced, and stress-free as much as possible.
What I'm getting from this, Darin, and I think it's important to address this since you're an Idaho-based company and Blake's an Idaho farmer, You got wildfires, you got smoke, you can't grow anything if you don't put a bunch of water out there. I think that the entire state of Idaho should have been left as a national park, which that all food production should happen in Indiana. So that way my farm ground is worth more money and I can charge more cash rent. Don't you think you should just basically, shouldn't that all be a national park out there?
Way to put me on a spot, Damian. Now, we have a lot of very beautiful national parks out here, but we do enjoy our agriculture. Thank you very much for putting me on the spot.
I love Idaho. I am going to be there, by the way, in February, dear listeners. I'm going to be in Burley, actually right there down the road from where Redox is for a speaking engagement. I'm going to go out and now I've decided I'm going to go and look up Blake because he's my new buddy. You said stress reduction, and then he went to more back to, I guess, Blake took it as, but stress reduction, but also this, and this. So when you talk about, I think it's important. Maybe I should say this. Had a hemp person on, and one of the statements me and my my co-host made was, sometimes these people promise too much stuff. Oh God, CBD oil, it cures rheumatoid arthritis, it makes you sleep better. When something is touted as does everything, your BS meter really goes up. You're not saying that. You said stress reduction, balancing plant, balancing biology, and then the ability to reduce some inputs. Those are probably, I think, the big benefits. Am I missing one?
No, you're spot on. Okay, and here's something to clarify. Never, I guarantee you that Blake doesn't. He knows the number to call up if he needs an insecticide. Guess what? Because they work. And so if the insects show up, let's say, for example, it rarely happens in Idaho, but we have a week-long rain event. I'm going to tell you that plant is metabolizing less, and it may be necessary to put on a fungicide or insecticide because of environmental conditions. What we shouldn't be doing is we shouldn't be just automatically putting them on as if the plant can't deal with it. Given proper fertilization, not over-fertilization, as you so aptly pointed out, proper fertilization, proper soil chemistry, proper plant nutrition, etc., that plant can deal with a lot of issues. And then on top of that, when you bring in anti-stress products in the form of biostimulants and biological products, it's amazing what plants can do. And I'm constantly reminded of something that happened to me early on in my career. I'm trying to make these products work, and I'm just working my fingers off. And I'm walking down the street thinking about what the next thing I can do is, and there in the middle of a concrete jungle is a weed growing out of a crack. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. These things can do incredible things. We fertilize and we till and we treat them like little babies. Plants are incredible in their ability to deal with the environment. And all we need to do is accentuate their given ability. So again, if you need a fungicide, use it. But why is it that the first thing we do is go to the fungicide instead of the first thing we go to is the bionutrient or the biostimulant? We should be growing the plant as best we can and then putting on the harsher chemistry. Instead, what we have done for years in agriculture, in my opinion, is we put the harsher chemistry on first, not worrying about how we're fertilizing. Are we over-fertilizing? Are we over-watering? Are we over-tilling? All those things have to be taken into account. The chemistry we have available in agriculture is wonderful. It's good chemistry. But I think we need to change our outlook to, first of all, we grow the plant, then we worry about the chemistry. We have it backwards. We worry about the chemistry after we planted the plant. And I just think we got to rethink how we do things in agriculture.
Blake, I know that, you even mentioned that your brother handles the cattle. We've gotten smarter on livestock production. The go-to was overusage of antibiotics. It ended up being a growth promotant because it just did, but it also meant that we made, and ag got real defensive, but there's absolute credible evidence that we invented some pretty damn drug-resistant, strains of bacteria out there, right? So with antibiotic overusage, I think we maybe have done that with the crop inputs. We used to put tetracycline in the drips of poultry for years, and it made birds, but it also made antibiotic-resistant, bugs out there. Am I kind of doing a comparison to agriculture and way of crop production accurately when I say that we've kind of done the same thing on overusage of some of the harsher chemistries?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's plenty of fungicides that don't work anymore, just because they've become resistant to, because we overuse them. Like Darin said, we didn't trust the plant to take care of itself if we set it up right. And so, yeah, I think it's a huge thing that the first thing we always turned to was to chemistry, and it wasn't necessarily, needed. I mean, still in potatoes, the mainstream thing on a fungicide is well, you need to apply it just before row closure, just so you got it there if you need it.
Yeah, right.
And it's, we've kind of showed that to be not necessarily the way that it needs to happen.
And Damian, if you'll allow me, based on that point, instead of thinking you apply the fungicide just in case you need it, what about the biological that helps the roots grow, or the biostimulant that helps kick up metabolism in the plant? And then if in the end you still have the need for a fungicide, by all means, use the fungicide. But we're putting the fungicide on first as if the plant can't grow. The plant can't grow because we haven't provided it what it needs, not because we haven't put on a fungicide.
What can't? Because we're in an era of there's 1,200 biological companies and the money behind them and all that, and they maybe have overpromised. Blake, what can't they do? Well, they can't be a fungicide, but they can supplant or replace the need for it. They aren't fertilizer, but they can reduce our dependence or our overusage, frankly, of what's the limitation? Like, we're not opposed to organic, but there's certain things that are realities. Help me dial it back.
I mean, like you say, there's thousands of biological products out there, I think, and some are good, some are not. Some are the snake oil that that everybody thinks they are, and some are good, valid products, and I think you've got to go with you've got to look at the history on some of these products, and the ones that showed up last year. If they don't have a background to them, they're probably just the ones that showed up last year. But what we look at for products, we want ones that have a good variance of species in there, a high count for species that are a broad spectrum, because that's what we've had success with. The ones that are very targeted, they might work one year, but then they don't the next year. And we've got a long enough track record that we know, okay, you can't physically over apply these. They are going to continue to work and continue to help build your soil and continue to help relieve that plant stress and make those nutrients more available.
Blake, you talked about using this on potatoes. You talked about sugar beets. But the other stuff, how do you use it?
We use it the same way, on
time of planting and then over the top.
Yeah, on our small grains and that, we aren't set up to put it in furrow.
Right.
And so we'll broadcast it on before we go in and plant. And then and most of our grains are a fall grain. So we'll put them in the fall before, and then we'll come in and top dress them in the spring, and then we'll usually, we'll have a herbicide application that we can put some stuff in with and that. And so
any compatibility issues?
There's a few products that will have some compatibility issues with some of the herbicides, which we've learned the hard way. But for the most part, everything really works well together.
Darin, isn't that kind of a thing I learned when I started working with Extreme Ag? Hell, they had experimented with stuff that needed refrigerated. Some of the biologicals. You don't have anything that needs to be kept in the fridge.
No, we're not in the biological. If you're talking about organism space, we're not in that space. We're in the plant extract, and we're in the fermentation. So we take the fermented product because it's more stable. I'm not knocking biologicals. I'm simply saying our choice has been products that are shelf stable and can be chemistry manipulated so that they can be mixable, easily mixable.
If you put some of your products in, I know that our guy Matt in Arkansas used something, and he was using a city water source, and the chlorine in the water source degraded the efficacy of some of the biologically derived products. You have any of that issue?
Yeah, we try to put, for example, most of our mixes have surfactants or chemistry because we're well aware of water chemistry. We're well aware of salts in water, etc. We try to put a little bit of material in there to reduce the effect of that. But if you're using harsh water, you're going to get what you use. You can't overcome that. Water is the largest input. I don't care if it's rainwater or otherwise. It's the largest outside input we have in agriculture. If it's bad, you're going to get bad results.
Like, where does this go? You 20 years ago came back with some new ideas, overcame the stuff you found. 12 years ago, started using Redox's products. Where do you go? Take me 5 years down the road. Probably, I think, even less. I think you'll use even less pounds of synthetic fertilizer. I think you'll use even less harsh chemistry. I think that's where you go 5 years from now. Am I right? And where else do you go?
No, absolutely. The last couple of years, especially on the potatoes, we've really been looking at reducing our nitrogen. Every year we've been able to pull more and more out, just because, the nitrogen is, the king of everything. But if you don't have everything else balanced, you can overapply it very easily. And so we're really diving into that a lot, especially through our SAP testing and that. We're really trying to get to that balanced plant and have that plant happy as much as possible and see what we can get out of it. So yeah, for sure, fertilizer reduction and backing out of more chemistry if we can. We've been playing with a lot of cover crops the last couple of years, and so we're really trying to see where we can get with that, what it can do for us, how much tillage we can reduce. It's almost just kind of become a challenge to what can we do next, and what not necessarily new product or anything that we can try, but what process can we get more efficient, and what can we do to help that plant be healthier every single day that's out in the field.
Yeah, I think it excites you a little bit. It's a little overwhelming. It was easier when you're old man. All you had to do is adjust to using 2,4-D and lots of fertilizer. Right? There's a little more array of products to use, and it can be a little overwhelming, I'm guessing.
Oh, absolutely. And that was the thing that kind of started me down this road was we're going to do the same thing again this year, and expect a different result, and that's, how do we improve our yields? How do we get better at them? And it wasn't a chemistry answer that was going to solve the problem. And so, yeah, it has put the excitement back into this. What can we do? How can we become better? Can we plant less seed and still get more yield? There's so many different things that we can look at now that we're not depending upon chemistry to rule the world for us, if that makes sense. And it really, the neat part is we've had the same effects on every crop we've used it on. And so, it's not just a crop specific thing that we've been able to walk through this and see happen.
Darin, I'm excited. Are you excited? Are you still excited as you were 30 years ago?
I'm more excited because we understand and know more. And so the new product chemistry that we're looking at that is in the pipeline for us right now, plus just the opportunity to have this conversation. Do you know, I would have almost sold my first child to have this conversation 30 years ago. Nobody would listen. Okay. Right. Now we have people listening because they see the results and we're better at what we do. Yeah, Damian, thank you for that, because I really am excited. This is a great time to be in agriculture with all the turmoil, commodity pricing, all the turmoil. There is so much opportunity if you look for ways to get better at what you do. Yes.
I agree with that. His name is Darin Mooney. He's a founder and CEO of a company called Redox Bionutrients. They're a new partner here with me on the Business of Agriculture. If you want to learn more, go to redoxgrows.com. You can also check out the Redox Grows podcast. They had me on as a guest, Jim Morris. He's going to be like my fill-in interviewer when I have to call it a sick day, but I don't take sick days. Blake Matthews, Idaho farmer, potato, sugar beets, barley, corn, wheat, alfalfa, presumably alfalfa for the dairy operations up there that all moved in from California. And again, I'm going to throw it out there. If they just want to cut back on growing stuff like that up there and move to Indiana, it would all be great. Anyway, his name is Blake Matthews. Thanks for being on here, my friend.
Thank you.
It's all right. So next time, go check out my friends at redoxgrows.com. I'm Damian Mason, and this is the Business of Agriculture. Hey, thanks for being here. This episode of the Business of Agriculture was brought to you by Pattern Ag. You've heard me talk about Pattern Ag because I think it's a pretty cool concept. New technology that allows you to predict the problems you're going to have and therefore treat them before those problems cost you money. What kind of problems am I talking about? Pests, and disease. Things like cordon rootworm, sudden death syndrome, cyst nematode, and a whole bunch of other bad things that happen out there in the field that can cost you money. Guess what? Pattern Ag will let you find out ahead of time if the disease or the pest pressure is there, and therefore you're treating it before it costs you any money. What a great concept. Go to pattern.ag, that's www.pattern.ag, to learn more about their product, their technology, how it can make you money, save you yield, and also where you can find a rep that can come out there and do the work for you. Pattern.ag.